Welcome to a segment that I'm calling the 411 on Highway 441 as I head into work in the mornings. Oftentimes I reflect, thinking about the day ahead of me and thinking about the events of the past few days. In particular, on today's episode, I'd like to cover the tragic shootings. There were two of them within hours that happened this past weekend. I have been trying to come to terms with that. I've had a lot of emotional content over it, ranging from rage to confusion to sadness, and I'm trying to find out how to internalize all of what has happened. So, I saw a tweet from Neil deGrasse Tyson, which tried to put scope on numbers. Let's talk numbers for a second. He had like the number of accidents in car crashes, the number of accidents from medical malpractice, the number of accidents from the flu. There were several examples of how much life is lost in our country, and considerably low number of loss to mass shootings. I can appreciate the scope of it. I can appreciate wanting to take a certain comfort from the fact that this may not be as much of an epidemic systematically as a threat as people think that it is. Which brings me to my next thought, which is that categorically, I believe that this kind of activity is terrorism, categorically speaking, because considering what Neil deGrasse Tyson said about the scope of the numbers, right, in America, and when you think about why it is that we are broadcasting this 24/7 on all news venues, it's because it incites within our society a sense of terror. So these individuals who go out and take life from others, they are terrorists. They are domestic terrorists, and it is rocking the foundation of our society. So let's pinpoint a couple of things. I'd like to talk about that for my students here, but I want to try to simplify it. So first and foremost, let's take the politics out of this. I don't want to approach this from a political standpoint. That gets really muddy. Then I'd love to take the racial components out of this as well, because unless we get a manifesto which directly states that both of these were racially motivated, we only know about the one. And that gentleman did say that he was trying to kill as many Mexicans as possible by the Mexican border at that Walmart. However, the other instance, the other shooting, there was no direct correlation to racism. So let's go ahead and take that out. So what we're left with is violence, gun violence in America. And when I think about gun violence in America, I would like to share a few things which I believe to be true. I believe that gun violence in America is a symptom of a much deeper emotional issue. It is a mental health issue that it is in our society prevalent right now. There's so much hatred and so much anger. We fuel that fire in our media. We fuel that fire in our culture. We fuel that fire everywhere I look. There's anger and frustration, and people are just upset. So instead of finding ways to try to be a part of the solution, oftentimes we find ourselves unknowingly, unwittingly, and unfortunately being a part of the problem. Today, I am going to have my students participate in a mental health minute. They will be, we will be discussing some of these issues in class briefly, and then I'm going to conclude that activity with a Triple H challenge. That would be a handshake, high five, or an appropriate school hug. And then as I wrap up today's 411 from the 441, I'd like to finish with a couple more things which I believe to be true. The world according to Mr. Pino. There's no place for military weapons in our society. There's no place at all. Military weapons have their function. Military individuals are trained professionals who operate these weapons in a certain environment and atmosphere for a certain reason. When you have assault rifles in general population, it's going to lend itself to this kind of violence. I listened to NPR one time a couple of months ago, and I heard after another one of these shootings, there was somebody, it was the New Zealand shooting, and then the Prime Minister, I believe, of New Zealand immediately the next day after that shooting in the church banned all assault weapons. And the only person that the alt could find to be a part of their cause was this sheep farmer who said that he goes up in helicopters with his assault rifle, and that he uses the fast action spray to thin out the herds, and by taking away his ability to do that, his job would take longer. It would directly impact the economy because of the financial. Okay, I get that, but certainly we can find a middle ground. Certainly we can come up with a way for you to retain your AK-47, sir, Mr. Sheep Herder, Mr. Sniping the herd from the helicopter, with a business license, and create an appropriate way for you to maintain your livelihood. I'm just referring back to, in America, again, the only country that has this kind of violence as prevalent as it is, as part of our inherent culture. Let's get the assault rifles off the street. I'm all for people's right to weapons. This may be uncouth, but keep your pistol, okay? Keep your pistol. If it helps you to feel safe, if it helps you to believe that you can be a part of that solution, not a part of the problem, and directly confront terror at home, I want you to have that. I don't necessarily believe that it's effective. I think that oftentimes gun ownership can be terribly deceptive. I think that if someone is breaking into your home, if you're a responsible gun owner and have that gun in a place where it is not accessible to minors and naive, untrained gun users, you're oftentimes going to find yourself needing a 3-second solution and only having a 60-second solution, because you would have to access your weapon, and by the time you realize there's a threat, it may even be too late. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have them. That's fine. Keep your shotgun. Keep your hunting equipment. I love hunting. I love going out and skeet shooting, and I love playing with archery. I was in the 4-H, for goodness sakes, and I remember going to camps in rural Georgia and shooting at the targets, and then going to the deer stands with my buddies in college, and I love all of that. However, back to the central point, there should be no extended barrels, there should be no assault rifles, there should be no military weaponry in the general public. And I would support a sweep. As many people as would be disappointed by it, I think the greater good would benefit from a sweep of this country somehow, and get them off the streets, shut down the loopholes at the gun shows where these individuals can just go in and skip the process, which is in place for a reason. All processes are frustrating. Nobody likes the DMV. Nobody likes to have to go through processes, but they exist for a reason. And the general good of our nation deserves a better set of processes to deal with this problem.